to keep the federal government in its place?
In its place was defined by Jefferson as, quote, chained down by the Constitution, closed quote. Madison argued that only an external structure, he meant the states, using nullification or secession would be enough to keep the feds in line. The one thing that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy and all the big government people in both parties fear more than anything else is that a section of the government wouldn't have to listen to them. So if Texas could secede, or Florida could say the Patriot Act doesn't apply in Florida, or Louisiana could say the IRS doesn't apply in Louisiana, the feds would go apoplectic. But that's what Madison argued, and that's what Jefferson argued. Who are they? Well, Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. Madison wrote the Constitution. Of course, nullification and secession were obliterated during the dictatorship of Abraham Lincoln. So we only can discuss them academically and hypothetically. There's a little bit of nullification going on, but it's very minor. There are some states that have nullified, you ready for this? Daylight saving time.
Yeah.
I'm glad they did it. It's not a big deal. It doesn't save me money, but it does say that some states will say to the federal government, go take a hike. This is ridiculous, changing the clocks every 6 months.
It is ridiculous. You know, my good friend, may rest in peace, when he died, it changed my life. I was so sad. His name was Thomas Naylor, and he started the Second Vermont Republic. And it was a secessionist movement that was really gaining a lot of strength. And it lost strength when Obama came in, but it was still going strong. Matter of fact, he used to be on Fox. He was in a lot of places. Oh, he was a brilliant guy. And that's what we really need. We need the freedom of the states to be who we want to be without, the communist dictatorship on top of the USSA, America, America, running our lives and telling us everything that we have to believe and must do. And you wrote in his masterpiece, Democracy, the God That Failed, Hans Hermann Hoppe articulates the truism that one is not truly free if one cannot leave the government. That applies to persons as well as political subdivisions. The forced retention of persons under the government's monopolistic jurisdiction is totalitarian.
Yes, it is. I think I've told you this story. Where I live in Northwest New Jersey, there isn't even an organized Democratic Party. Everybody in power is a Republican. The mayor of my little town, it's a part-time mayoralty. The town is 26 square miles. There's only 4,000 people that live here. He's a pig farmer, but the taxes are out of sight. I said to the mayor, how about if you and the next town over compete with each other for your services and my tax dollars? See who can provide me with more services at less cost. That'll keep both of you honest. You're a free market guy. Competition improves the product. He looked at me and said, I never heard of anything more communistic in my life. Communistic, it's purely capitalistic. Something happens to people when they get in the government. And by not allowing competition, by not facing the threat that I'm going to leave the government, that you don't govern me anymore because I didn't consent to you, by barring that, they have become totalitarian. Hoppe argued for competition in government, which of course we don't have today. The government forces you to obey it or to go to jail.
You call them bureaucrats. You misspelt it. They're bureaucrats. You gotta call them who they are. And again, these are people, most of them, that can't get a job in the real world, and they get into the political system and they get these jobs. They're not the brightest on the planet. And you go on to write here, the last insidious structure is neither fish nor fowl. It is not clearly in any branch of constitutional government. It writes rules, enforces them, and interprets them. Example, the U.S. tax code enacted by Congress runs to 2,600 pages. It is indecipherable monstrosity. But the IRS own regulations written by IRS bureaucrats, not by Congress, run to 9,000 pages. And the IRS interpretations of its own regulations run to 70,000 pages. This is Wilson's government by experts.
Correct. Correct. So the IRS is a good example. They write regulations, they interpret the regulations, and they enforce the regulations. That's a legislative function, which should be congressional. That's an executive function, which should be presidential. That's a judicial function, which should be judiciary. So Wilson effectively created, and every president, even Reagan, has expanded it. Wilson effectively created a fourth branch of government. It's neither fish nor fowl. It's not in the car. It's not in the legislature. It's not in the executive. It's not in the judiciary. It continues to get money. It continues to grow. It writes its own rules. It interprets those rules. It enforces those rules. And no matter who's the president, the bureaucrats never change. Now, the president does appoint the head of each agency. Yeah. But the people that run the agency, that write the rules, never change. Example, the EPA. Now, this is a famous case in which Justice Gorsuch wrote that a mud puddle is not a navigable water, but the EPA attempted to regulate a mud puddle on a farmer's property, and the farmer challenged it all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court threw out the regulation. But it cost this farmer a fortune in money and 10 years of litigation before it happened.